Welcome. We're continuing with the study of the Beis Halevi's tract on Betochen, and we're going to continue now with the fifth paragraph. Okay, so we're saying last week we studied that a person should realize that everything's coming from God Almighty, and that if things are not going his way, he has to turn to God Almighty, not to the instrument that's he's confronting and he feels is impediment to what he wants. That is just a rod in the hands of God Almighty. Rather, he needs to turn to God Almighty and know that that is the answer. The answer is turning to God Almighty to beg for a better outcome, better result, whatever he needs from the real source and not from an intermediary. So over here in paragraph 5, we have a adam. So also in the mezainas of a person, meaning the food for a person. So we could think of food as a livelihood. We have to remember that the word here is food, and it doesn't say money. Money is just a human invention that is a useful tool, but it doesn't really relate to what the reality is. The reality is that we need to put food on the table. And so, well, let's see over here. We'll read this paragraph, and then we'll see an example of how that applies. So, as it comes to food, as it comes to sustenance, all his efforts, all his striving and his efforts, exertions, are not going to help him anything at all. To increase, to make better, to improve what has been decreed for him. Like it says in the verse, so let's take a look at this. We're going to add here. We'll go to the book of Exodus, and we see that this is talking about the man that fell from heaven. God was sustaining the Jewish people in the desert. And it says in verse 17, and the children of Israel did so. Everyone gathered what they needed, both the one who gathered much and the one who gathered little. They measured it afterwards with a form of measurement, and they saw that whoever gathered more did not have more. Whoever gathered little did not have less. Each one, according to his eating capacity, is what he had. Meaning to say, okay, a person's collecting for his family, whatever he needed, whatever God had decreed for him, he was going to have, regardless of how much effort he went in. So this is a key component of our trust in God Almighty, is that a person needs to know they're going out there in the desert. They're going to say, listen, let me get enough food for today. Maybe I can have a bigger meal. Maybe I'm going to have food for tomorrow. I'll store it up. And so we see that it didn't make a difference how much effort a person put in. Whatever they meant to get, they got. And in fact, you see later on in verse 19 that Moses says to them that they should not leave any over until the morning. But some men did not want to listen to Moses, our teacher, and they left over some of it till the morning, thinking that they're going to have like a head start on everyone else. But it bred worms and became putrid, it rotted, and Moses, our teacher, was upset with them that they didn't listen. So this comes to teach us, the Beis Halevi says over here, that it's not going to help us. Extra effort and extra striving is not going to help us at all. What's been decreed for us, we are going to get. The man, which is this this food that God Almighty sent from heaven. This is something that is a sign for all generations that extra help, extra effort, extra intensity, extra striving is not going to help at all. Okay, now I want to tell you a story by one of the descendants of the Beis Levi, that he was living in the times of one of the world wars, or maybe between the world wars, and I don't remember exactly what the timing was, but there was massive inflation where they were located. Something very much relevant to our times. People talk about inflation being today 5%, 20%. We see on a regular basis 100 and 200% inflation on practical items that are necessary to purchase. That's what we're seeing. So his daughter came to him very, very scared. She said, Dad, what's going to be? How are we going to be able to afford food? The price is skyrocketing through the roof. So he said to her, pay attention to what it says, that a person's mezanos, his sustenance, is set for him at the beginning of the year. It says that every human being has their sustenance set for him before Rosh Hashanah, which is the first of the month of Tishrei. It's the head of the new year. And his sustenance is set for him. Notice he says it doesn't say his money is set for him. So a person can start to think, okay, let's say it was set for me to make X numbers of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, or thousands of dollars a month, whatever the number is. And now the prices have doubled. So now what was set at the beginning of the year is out of whack with the actual money that was, the amount of money that was set at the beginning of the year is now out of whack with the actual money that's coming in. So his point is, no, it doesn't say that it's set your money, financial income at the beginning of the year. It's set your sustenance. You will have what was decreed for you in terms of sustenance, whatever the price is. And we can also apply this, for example, in regards to food and sustenance. What happens if a person is not dependent on income, but he's dependent on storage? Let's say he has a storage facility and he's storing food. The amount of food he's going to eat each day and have each day is completely dependent on the decree of God Almighty. Meaning to say, it has to be saved from mold, funguses, insect infestations, flooding, fire. There's so many ways in which a very rich storehouse of food can be completely lost and become completely valueless. So he's not going to have, and we saw that exactly what we just said, this concept of making a storehouse. We see that in the verses we just read from the book of Exodus, that actually storing it led it to be destroyed. So when it says over here, in matters of a person's sustenance, all his striving and his efforts are not going to help at all in terms of increasing over what was decreed for him. We could see that both in terms of actually making a living, in terms of generating new income and or generating new produce, and also in terms of storing food. That's what we have to understand, and we have to realize we have to turn to God Almighty in everything that we're doing constantly, and that's where our prayers have to be directed. And that's where our intentions have to be directed. Any questions before we move on to the 6th paragraph? Okay, so paragraph number 6 over here. We see it says, every person has had the experience of seeing with his own eyes that there are times, perhaps even many times, that is not enough, or it's not only that his efforts don't help him at all, but on the contrary, they make things even worse for him. And actually he makes things worse by striving harder. So let's look up what this means. And we'll see over here in Isaiah, prophet Isaiah says, They hatch the viper's eggs and they leave spider webs. Whoever eats of their eggs shall die. And what it hatches emerges a viper. Wow. What's going on over here? So let's see how he explains this. He says, Dima hishtalusam l'ma'asef beitzim. We compare our efforts to someone who is collecting eggs. He's gathering eggs, l'maychale, for him to eat. And he heats them up. He keeps them warm because he wants them to hatch. So he'll have whatever is going to chickens or quail or whatever is going to hatch from these eggs. In order they should break out of these eggs, should break out chickens so he could eat them. Turns out after all his striving that the eggs that he was warming were actually snakes and vipers. They were the eggs of a snake and a viper. And this snake comes out and it harms him, it bites him. So this is an example of a verse saying that the person is putting all this effort into the things, thinking he's somehow going to control the outcome, control the situation. He has to know, no, any extra effort is not only not going to help, but it could even make things worse. As in the case of this fellow who was striving to get so many eggs, and he collected snake eggs, viper eggs, and then he ended up getting damaged by them. So too the verse says in the book of Job. It says over here in the book of Job. One second here. Oh, so hey, Gimel 13. He traps, so to speak, the wise in their own tricks, in their own conspiracies. Right? The Eitzah Natalim Nimharu, and the counsel of the crooked is hasty. So what does that mean for our context over here? That God is trapping the people who are being overly clever and coming up with all kinds of schemes. They get trapped in those schemes. So it actually hurts them. It's in their overthinking things and their strategizing. In it, it's that itself is what traps them, what snares them. Brad brings a story from the Gemara, the Talmud in Sukkah, Perek HaCholil, that is decreed on them, on certain servants of King Solomon, that they were going to die in the place, in the gate of the place called Luz, and he himself, King Solomon, sent them there where they died. He was trying to save them from getting killed, and he sent them to where they would die. So let's pull that up for a second. Can you see this? Sukkah 53a? Yes? Okay, great. So here the Gemara tells the following story in the tractate of the Talmud, Sukkah 53a. The Gemara relates the story with its two, the Hanhu Tarte Kushoi, the Habi Kaimid Kamei Shlema, that they were in service of the king, King Solomon. There was an Elichayef, the Achia B'nei Shisha. They were two men, Acharef, and one was called Achia. And they were described, Seif and Shalom Havi. Yom Achad, Chazim Malach Hamavis, the Havika Atziv. So one day, King Solomon, who was a very, very wise person, very perceptive, he understood what the animals were saying, he understood what was going on in the world. So he saw the angel of death, and he saw the angel of death was sad. So he said to him, Amarle, Amai atzivot, what's making you sad? Amarle, the kabo mene hani tarte kushoi yasvi hacha. He said that he was given, the angel of death replies and says he was given an assignment to take these two men who are sitting here, these two scribes of his. So Masrinehu the Seirim, Shadrinahu Machayze Lutulus. So he sent them to immediately, he wanted to rescue them. So he sent them to this place called Luz. It was a district of Luz, and that area had the angel of death had no rulership over it. So it says, when they arrived at that place, they died. So the next day, next day, King Solomon sees the angel of death is happy. Why are you happy? So the angel of death says, Amarle, in the place that they asked me, that where his assignment was to have these two people die, that's where you exactly sent them. So the angel of death says, explains here in the comment, the angel of death was instructed to take their lives in the district of Luz. Since they resided in Solomon's palace and never went to Luz, he was unable to complete his mission. That saddened him. Ultimately, Solomon dispatched them to Luz, thinking that he's going to try to save them. But that's how he enabled the angel to accomplish his mission, because in sending them to this place where they were going to be safe, they had to pass into the area. I mean, ultimately, if they had reached the area, they would have been fine, but they came to the gates of it, so to speak. They came to the outskirts of the area where they're going to be safe, and there the angel of death was able to do his job. So then, miyad pasach shleim v'amar v'gloihi ra'inish inun ovrim bei asar the misbayi taman mavilin yosei. He said, King Solomon said, the feet of a person are responsible for him. To the place where he is in demand, there they lead him. So what the Beis Halevi is saying over here that really happened was that King Solomon tried too hard. He didn't realize that he came to understand that the angel of death wanted to kill these two people, to take their lives. But he didn't realize that the angel of death could not take them while they were in his palace. So he ended up trying too hard to save them, and he sent them to exactly the place where the angel of death was able to have the power to take them. And so this story tells us that basically he's bringing this story to show us we got to be very, very careful. We have to do our part. Now, he's not saying we're not supposed to do our part. And in later chapters, later paragraphs, we're going to see, he talks about what is the proper amount of effort we're supposed to put in. But one of the things that we can see is that when we see that we're striving, we're trying to outwit, we're trying to do something that's already gone beyond the effort that's supposed to be required, then that's a sign that we are putting in too much effort. And the too much effort is not only not going to help, but it's actually going to lead to harm. Just like in the case of a person who's going to strive so hard to have chickens, he's going to end up warming viper eggs. And so too, if a person is going to try so hard to save this person from any harm, that he's going to end up putting him right into the way of harm. God forbid. So we need to ask God Almighty, what does he want us to do? This is why prayer is so important, and having the opportunity to pray and to ask God, what does he want? That's what's so essential, because we have to listen to that voice inside of us that's going to tell us, you know what, I think I've done enough. Now, some people, they were brought up this way. You got to try harder and harder and harder and harder, and they don't know how to find the right place, but that's part of our growth experience. We need to learn that the habitual thoughts, you see people who can't rest, they can't relax from work, they can't take off Shabbos from their work, or they can't take off something to recuperate They got to force themselves to keep going even while they're sick and healing. These are examples of where a person is trying too hard, and the consequences of trying too hard ends up in mental stress and also ends up in physical stress and distress, and then both lead to the mental stress leads to mental unhealthiness, and the physical stress leads to the person not being physically healthy. Because wherever our thoughts are, that's where our mental health and our emotional health and our physical health is going to go. So we're going to have to wait to learn together what is the proper amount of effort we're supposed to put in. But I think that even without getting to what the Beis Halevi has to say, we all know when we are pushing ourselves. You know, we're already skipping. We're skipping eating. We're skipping going to the bathroom. We're skipping taking care of ourselves. We're just like pushing. I'm just going to get this done. I got to get this done. I got to take care of this, you know, badgering people, following up in a way that becomes unpleasant for people. These are examples of where we're striving. And it's interesting that the word in Hebrew, yigiyase, for striving, yigiya for striving, also means to arrive. So sometimes you see it translated as effort. I want to suggest that it really means to strive, because effort means I'm pushing something, I'm trying to do something, pushing or pulling. But this striving is connected, the word yigiya is connected with the arriving. I am trying to arrive somewhere else. I'm trying to get somewhere, and I'm striving and striving and striving. And that is not only not going to help if God has not decreed that it should help, or that this should be the result, but it also could even cause damage, God forbid. Any questions? Okay, good. So we'll continue next week with the next paragraph, and we'll let me know next week how you've had the opportunity to implement this in your lives. Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi Smith.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Bye now. Thank you.